This is the legend of PikVille Heavy Industries, the ongoing record of a company that refuses to stay in one timeline. I'm Pickfire, and Cuppertine's brought me another stack of files I don't remember creating. The desert's humming again, the archives are shifting, and PHI is ready to show us something new. Let's get into it. Episode 13, Sky Harbor versus Tempe. In previous episodes, we've made mention of friction between the City of Tempe and Sky Harbor International. Let's say we go a tiny bit deeper, shall we? Let's begin with the common narrative surrounding the battle for Tempe's skies. Tempe wanted to grow, Phoenix wanted to protect its airport, the FAA wanted whatever the FAA ever wants. This is the seed of the war, and the start of this episode. I posit that the above statement is kind of backwards, as Tempe's borders were pretty much set before the airport was much more than a barn to storm. So the city itself wasn't growing towards an airport, it was protecting its right to build on its own property. Phoenix, likewise, did want to protect its airport, but chose growth over respecting their neighbors. The FAA wanted whatever the FAA ever wants. That much remains the same. But let's go back a ways. The 1950s being the first era of increased air traffic, and popular belief is that both grew towards each other. But there were a few problems with noise, so there was little political friction. The 1960s had an increase in jet traffic, and the noise and air pollution increased right along with it, as did the complaints. But political battles were well hidden. As a side note, my dad worked on Mayor Campbell's vehicles in our carport in those days. I seem to remember Rudy being a fisherman, and his wife, I think it was Ingrid or Gretchen or Gertrude, but his wife drove this old Jeep Wagoneer with a Buick V8 in it for way too long. Couldn't talk her out of that thing. Which, by the way, really adds very little to this story. The 1970s was when the detritus hit the prop, as we sub-builders love to say. Tempe is pretty much an urban city, and Sky Harbor continues its unchecked growth towards Tempe property, rather than inward towards its own downtown area. I have it on good authority that there were at least a few offers to share cost and responsibility as well as profits, which could have spared us all the rest of the commotion. Unfortunately, having property devalued and being challenged on a development that you can bring forth, inevitably leading to broken agreements, that's the history most Tempeans recollect. Which brings us to my area of interest, the Rio Salado project. Complaints about noise and other pollution started picking up in the mid-1960s, just as students at Arizona State University were handing in their masterwork of a class project, that which would become the Rio Salado project. There are those that believe influential people that stood the most to gain by expanding towards Tempe rather than anywhere else in the sprawl that is Phoenix have been active in voting against or funding anti-Tempe or Rio Salado development plans for years. You should ask yourself how much nicer that part of Phoenix would be if they spent money on river development instead of wasting it on influencing voters against it. Now it's just a given that the airport and its minions have been single-handedly successful in holding up this project for some 30-plus years. Who's that minion? Say it with me. Gerald Jerry Latchford. What is this guy's problem? Join us next time on the legend of PikVille Heavy Industries. Stay heavy, man. Audio textures and musical elements in this episode were sourced from Pixabay, courtesy of the creators who generously released their work into the wild. PHI thanks you, even if PHI doesn't officially exist here.